The red and blue lights pulsed across my driveway, flashing through the night like restless fireflies caught between the shadows of the maple trees. 2 squad cars rolled to a stop in front of my house, their sirens fading into a hum that settled uneasily in the cool air. From the living room window, I saw my daughter, 16-year-old Emily, standing frozen on the porch. Her overnight bags hung limply from trembling hands, the strap twisting between her fingers as though she were holding on to courage itself. 2 officers were approaching her cautiously, palms hovering over their duty belts, their eyes scanning every movement. And there, standing at the edge of my property with her arms crossed and that infuriatingly smug grin carved across her face, was Patricia Hawthorne, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge Estates. What Patricia didn't realize was that tonight she had made the biggest mistake of her self-righteous, power-drunk life. Let me take you back a little. My name is David Garrison, and for the past 12 years, I've served as a circuit court judge here in Jefferson County. After my divorce 3 years ago, Emily began splitting her time between my home in Maple Ridge and her mother's house across town. It was an arrangement that worked perfectly fine for everyone except Patricia Hawthorne. Patricia was our ever-watchful HOA president, and she treated every resident like a defendant in her imaginary courtroom. She had turned what should have been a simple homeowners association into a miniature dictatorship, ruling over the neighborhood with the precision of a bureaucratic tyrant. She memorized every bylaw, enforced every rule with an almost religious fervor, and took visible pleasure in catching residents committing the smallest infractions. A trash can left out after 6 p.m.? That was a $50 fine. Grass half an inch too tall? Another citation. Once, she fined a neighbor $200 for leaving their Christmas lights up until January 3rd. But Patricia's favorite obsession wasn't lawns or lights. It was people. She was obsessed with monitoring who came and went from the neighborhood. She fancied herself a community's self-appointed security force, lurking near the gates, interrogating delivery drivers, tailing unfamiliar cars, and snapping photos like a second-rate private investigator. Most of us tolerated her antics, figuring it wasn't worth the fight. That is, until she turned her sights on my daughter. It was supposed to be an ordinary Friday. Emily had just arrived for her weekend visit. Her mother dropped her off at the gate, as usual, and she walked the short 2 blocks of my house, a routine she'd done dozens of times before. I was in my home office reviewing case files for Monday when I heard something unusual outside. At first, I thought it was the sound of kids playing, but then I caught the unmistakable crackle of police radios. My stomach tightened. I rushed to the front door and froze. Emily stood on the porch surrounded by 2 uniformed officers, tears streaking her face as she tried to explain that she lived here, that I was her father. But before she could get more than a few words out, Patricia's shrill, self-righteous voice sliced through the air like nails on a chalkboard. I saw her sneaking around the back of the house. Patricia declared dramatically, waving her arms like she was testifying before a jury. She was casing the place. I've never seen her before, and I know everyone in this neighborhood. She's obviously some troubled teen trying to break in while the owners are away. I stopped a burglary in progress. You should be thanking me. The officers exchanged uncertain glances. The taller one, a calm, composed woman named Officer Chen, tried to de-escalate. She said gently. She says she lives here. She even has a key. Patricia scoffed. Of course she has a key. She probably stole it, or had one made. I've seen this on the news. These kids case neighborhoods, wait for the right moment, and then strike. That's when I stepped outside. Is there a problem here, officers? I asked evenly. Patricia's face lit up with relief, or perhaps triumph, like she'd been waiting for an audience. Oh, Judge Garrison, thank goodness you're home. I just caught this girl trying to break into your house. Don't worry, I called 911 immediately. I descended the porch steps slowly, pulling my wallet from my pocket. That won't be necessary, I said, handing them my ID. This is my daughter, Emily. She's here for her visitation weekend. Officer Chen took my license and judicial ID, and I could see her expression soften instantly. Her partner, a younger officer named Mitchell, shifted awkwardly when he recognized my name. They both knew me. I presided over more than a few of their department's cases. Judge Garrison, Chen said, her tone now formal. Our apologies for the misunderstanding. We received a report of a possible break-in. And just like that, Patricia's confidence began to crumble. Wait, what? No, that can't be right, she sputtered. I've never seen this girl before. She can't possibly be, I interrupted sharply, my voice carrying the same weight it did in my courtroom. This is my daughter, Emily. She's been visiting me every other weekend for 3 years. If you've never noticed, that says more about your attention span than her right to be here. Patricia's cheeks flamed red. Well, how was I supposed to know? She was acting suspiciously, walking around the back of the house. The back? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You mean the path from the street to the front door? The one she uses because the side gate is locked. Emily finally found her voice, though it trembled. I tried to tell her, Dad, she said, sniffling. I told her I was your daughter, but she just yelled at me to get off the property, and then she called the cops. Officer Mitchell was already jotting notes. Ms. Hawthorne, he said carefully, did this young lady identify herself to you before you called 911? Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Well, she might have said something, but I didn't believe her. Anyone could claim to be someone's daughter. I was just being cautious. You can't be too careful these days. Officer Chen's voice was calm but firm. Actually, Ms. Hawthorne, you can be too careful. Filing a false police report is a crime. I took a step closer, my tone low and deliberate. You called 911 to report a burglary in progress, when what you actually saw was a teenager entering her father's home, with permission. It wasn't false, Patricia protested, her voice losing its edge. I genuinely believed. You genuinely believed, I interrupted, my voice now cutting, that harassment could be mistaken for civic duty. Tell me, Ms. Hawthorne, how many other residents' children have you called the police on? How many innocent visitors have you terrorized with your little vigilante routine? The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Clearly, this wasn't their first run-in with Patricia's self-appointed crusades. Officer Mitchell glanced through his notes. Actually, Your Honor, he said, we've responded to several calls from Ms. Hawthorne over the past year. Most turned out to be false alarms. Patricia's face twitched. I'm just trying to keep this neighborhood safe, she insisted, her arms lowering, her voice faltering. No, I corrected, my voice firm and even. You're trying to control this neighborhood. There's a difference. And today, you cross a line. You didn't just harass a visitor. You traumatize a minor. My daughter. Officer Chen stepped forward, her tone now professional and final. Ms. Hawthorne, I'm issuing a formal warning for misuse of emergency services. This incident will be documented. If a pattern of false reports continues, you could face criminal charges. Patricia's complexion drained from red to pale. You can't do that. I'm the HOA president. I have a responsibility. Your responsibility, I interrupted coldly, is to manage common areas and enforce actual HOA bylaws. Nowhere in those bylaws does it grant you authority to play police officer, and I should know. I reviewed them thoroughly before buying this house. I turned to the officers. I'll be filing formal complaints, not just with your department, but with the HOA board. This behavior needs to be addressed officially. Officer Chen nodded respectfully. That's your right, Your Honor. Then she turned to Patricia. I suggest you learn what constitutes a real emergency. Wasting police resources is a serious matter. As the patrol cars backed away, their taillights casting red reflections across Patricia's stunned face, a small crowd of neighbors began to disperse. But I caught more than a few satisfied smirks and approving nods. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who'd grown tired of a tyranny. This isn't over, Patricia snapped weakly. I'll be addressing this at the next board meeting. Your daughter may be allowed to visit, but there are procedures, guest registrations, proper notifications. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, let's discuss it right now. I believe I have board member Jennifer Rodriguez on speed dial. She's an attorney. You know, I'm sure she'd love to hear how the HOA president called the cops on a resident's child. Patricia's eyes widened. That's not necessary. We can handle this internally. Oh, I think it's very necessary, I replied, scrolling through my contacts. You see, Ms. Hawthorne, you've been operating under the illusion that your title gives you unlimited authority. But every system, even a homeowners association, has checks and balances. The next few weeks were enlightening. True to my word, I filed formal complaints with both the police department and the HOA board. Word spread through Maple Ridge like wildfire. Patricia Hawthorne, the untouchable HOA president who once strutted through the neighborhood with a clipboard like a crown, had finally gone too far. She had called the police on Judge Garrison's daughter, and in doing so, she'd alienated one of the most respected legal figures in the county. 2 weeks later, an emergency HOA meeting was called. The community clubhouse overflowed with residents, every seat taken, every corner filled, murmurs rippling through the crowd like the buzz before a verdict. One by one, people stood to speak, and with every testimony, Patricia's kingdom began to crumble. Mr. Patterson, an elderly widower, was first. He described being fined because his grandson's bike sat in his driveway for 10 minutes. Then came the Sharps, who revealed Patricia had called the police on their family reunion, claiming it was an unauthorized event. Even timid Mrs. Foster, whose hands trembled as she stood, shared how Patricia had harassed her over the color of her flower beds. Patricia sat at the board table, shrinking a little more with every story. Her once commanding posture had dissolved into something small, deflated. When the vote of no confidence was finally called, the result was unanimous. Not a single hand rose in her defense. Even her former allies avoided her gaze. But the reckoning didn't end there. After reviewing her history of false reports, the county prosecutor's office decided to press charges: misuse of emergency services. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who couldn't stop calling the police was now being summoned by them. On the morning of her arraignment, I saw her in the courthouse hallway. She looked like a shadow of herself, hair unkempt, confidence gone, eyes hollow. Her attorney, a nervous young man clearly regretting his choice of client, spoke to her in hushed tones. 50 hours of community service. I overheard him saying, and a $5,000 fine. You'll also be barred from holding any HOA leadership position for 5 years. Patricia's face crumpled. $5,000. 5 years of exile from her self-made throne. Our eyes met for a brief moment as I passed. I could have said something sharp, something satisfying, but I didn't need to. The law had already spoken. Justice doesn't always rule. Sometimes it arrives quietly, calm, decisive, absolute. That morning, Patricia Hawthorne pleaded no contest. Her voice was barely a whisper as she accepted her sentence. And when the judge read it aloud, community service, the fine, and the leadership ban, her shoulders sagged. $5,000. 5 years of silence. And for the first time in a very long while, Maple Ridge Estates finally felt peaceful again.